All right, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us for the last session of the day before the Ask the Experts session. My name is Dan Holm. I'm the Director of Product Marketing for SharePoint, and I'd like to welcome you to our session, Discover What's New and What's Coming for the SharePoint Mobile and Intelligent Intranet. This is our opportunity to really show off the investments we've made in SharePoint to help you collaborate more effectively on content across your organization. As you've no doubt heard, SharePoint is one of many industry-leading services that comprise Office 365. And together, we give you the tools you need to collaborate the way you want and power those services with back-end intelligence from Microsoft Graph to surface information and actionable data for you, and with security and compliance services that ensure your data is secure, under your control, is private, and is as manageable as you need it to be. SharePoint powers Office 365 with file sharing, with sites, with lists and pages and libraries that are infused into other Office services as well. And in this session, we're going to look at what's new in the Mobile Intelligent Intranet by starting with how we at Microsoft look at the Mobile Intelligent Intranet. Then with lots and lots of demos of the new features, a preview of what's coming, and then opportunity for Q&A. In May of 2016, about 9 months ago, we unveiled a new vision for SharePoint to really reinvent it as a cloud-first, mobile-first experience that enables collaboration across devices wherever you are, whenever you need it. We framed that vision around a set of pillars listed on this slide, making file sharing simple and powerful, allowing you to build a mobile intelligent intranet featuring productive and dynamic team sites, making sure that that platform is open and connected so that developers and information workers alike can extend that platform to build custom solutions, ensuring that your data and the content you trust in SharePoint is secure, private, and compliant, and ensuring that you have the ability to choose whether you take advantage of these capabilities in the cloud, on premises with SharePoint Server 2016, or anywhere in between with hybrid configurations. This particular session focuses on two of those pillars, the Mobile Intelligent Intranet and productive and dynamic team sites. The Mobile Intelligent Intranet is based on SharePoint, but that's not really what it's about. It's not about the technology. It's about what you do with the technology. We want to put you in the middle of the discussion. The work you're trying to do in the context of your teams and in the broader context of your organization drives you to be as productive as possible. And in these days, that means working not just at your desk tied to your PC and your browser, but working anywhere, anytime on personal, on individual, team, and corporate work. In order to power that work, we need to make sure that you can connect to the resources you need, the people and expertise, the content, such as files and data, the discussions that are happening, the conversations in your organization, the business processes that power work, and the data that surfaces insights and actionable information. We need to make sure that you're connected to all of that. And that's the role of the modern intelligent intranet. It's to connect you with expertise, people, content, and process. When we look at how SharePoint supports that and take a look at the technology that aligns and powers those capabilities, it looks something like this to us. What this means is that SharePoint is exposing capabilities through file sharing, which we talked about in the last session with OneDrive, but we'll talk about more now in the context of team sites. And team sites that allow you to do more than just share files, but allow you to power collaboration with pages, lists, business processes, and then connect your teams and your organization through intranets and portals, and power business process and transform business process with business applications. So file sharing, team sites, intranets, and business apps are the technical containers, if you want to think about that comprise the Mobile Intelligent Intranet. Now, we want to make sure that those experiences surface whether you're on a mobile device or on any browser. We want to make sure that you can extend those experiences as a developer. And we want to make sure that you're able to run those services in Office 365, on-prem, or in hybrid configurations. And we want to take advantage of the incredible capabilities of Office 365 to unify access to content and services through groups, to power discovery and intelligent experiences through Microsoft Graph, and to make sure that your data is secure. So that's what it looks like. And as we set forth to reinvent SharePoint, in the last year, we've released more significant features than at any point in SharePoint's history. Last year, it might as well have been 2 new versions of SharePoint in the period of about 9 months. And this is just this is not even the full list of features that we baked into SharePoint. It's been an incredible year, and I encourage you after this session to really go back and look online at what we've done. Almost all of these features are now in first release. Many of them are right now in this quarter hitting general availability, which means while we've been talking about these things for 9 months, since May and through Ignite to today, you're now going to have access to all of these capabilities in any Office 365 tenant. So let's break this down. The mobile and intelligent intranet is about connecting you to the resources you need, the people, the content, and the business processes. It's about ensuring that you can collaborate, communicate, and coordinate within and across your teams using those experiences that we listed earlier, team sites, business processes and applications, and portals. And that means you're going to have a lot of content that you're working with, and it's critical that you're able to find what you need to get your job done. To actually create that connection between you and what you need, you have to be able to navigate to, search for, or discover content. And so we'll look at the new experiences in SharePoint Home and on SharePoint Mobile, as well as Delve, that allow you to do that. And we want to make sure that things come to your attention, that you stay informed and you're able to know what's going on in your teams and across your organization through activity feeds and brand new features like news. So let's take a look at these capabilities in a demo. And it wouldn't be a mobile and intelligent intranet if it didn't start off being mobile. So we're going to begin on my phone. So this is an iOS device, but the experiences I show you apply to Windows and Android as well. And here I've got at the bottom my SharePoint app, which I use all the time. So we're just going to open that up and get right to work. And here in my SharePoint app, we'll start by talking about how I can navigate to resources that I need. The second link on the bottom is links. These are links to sites or applications that my organization thinks are important to me. So these are the kinds of links that your IT organization or maybe your corporate communications department would be giving you, saying, you know, this is something you probably need. And so I can get to certain things from links. But the reality is, no matter what my organization tells me, I usually want to go straight to my work, which I can find on sites. And here on the Sites tab, I can see a list of sites based on what I've used recently and frequently. So we're seeing here the frequent list. And in my day-to-day work, I find this is how I usually get to sites, because if I've been there regularly, it's probably the one I want to get to right away. So I use this view myself. But there's also the following view. And the following view is like your favorites or bookmarks. You can flag a site as a site you want to follow so that it appears in your navigational constructs here. So if, for example, I'm on the loyalty program site, notice on the upper right-hand edge there's that star. That is how I choose to unfollow or follow a site so that it appears in my navigation. So I can navigate to resources here in SharePoint Mobile, and I can find content that way, or I can find expertise by going to people. So when I go to the people view, I see a list of people that is, you might notice, not necessarily in alphabetical order. This list of people is initially showing me people that I work with regularly based on the intelligence that's been gathered by Microsoft Graph, looking at me and who I work with, looking at my organizational relationships, and saying these are the people that are probably most important to me. And if I go in and look at a particular colleague here, I can get their contact information, their office location, their job title. I can see who their manager is, and I can see a broader view of the organizational chart. And I can see content that they're working on. So this content is, again, being surfaced by Microsoft Graph. It's looking at what files I have access to, so I'll never see something that I don't have access to, but that Jeff has worked on recently. And this is a great way to find content that I need to work with. I think most of us have probably had the experience where You want to work on a file, look at it or edit it, and you know who shared it with you, but you don't have the slightest recollection where it was or where you even saved it. You've lost the file, but you know who showed it to you. This is how you get to it. You go to, I know Jeff shared a file with me. I can go to it and say, oh yeah, it was that ad slogans document. And because he's worked on it recently, I can see that and get to it super quickly. So I can find content through people. It also helps me understand more what Jeff does. I can look at the files he's working on and learn more about him. And I can even see the projects that we're working on together that he's working on currently. So he doesn't necessarily even have to tell me he's revised a document. I can go in and see that it's been revised and work on that document myself. So this people experience is something that used to be limited to Delve. We've now baked that capability into the SharePoint mobile app so you can connect with expertise. So far, I've been browsing. I've been navigating around my world, whether it's content or people. Sometimes I just know exactly what I'm looking for, and I can search for it. So I'm going to go ahead and click the search icon in the upper right corner, and it allows me to search all of SharePoint here. So I'm going to go ahead and search for slogans, and notice the second item is that Jeff Teeper Ad Slogans document. So if I know exactly what I'm looking for, I can search for it. This initial list, notice how blazing fast that was, is being produced by Microsoft Graph. It's caching the stuff that's closest to me, so when I search, I'm able to find that stuff super fast. But I can go to more results and get a more traditional search experience. Oh, let me finish typing here. Traditional search is a bit more literal there. And I can see files that have that particular name. I can see people, and of course the word slogans doesn't help much there, or even sites. Let me do a little bit of a different example here. Let's say I'm looking for information on loyalty programs. I've got the ability to see sites that match that term, files that match that term, people who know something about loyalty based on their job title, the content they work on, or what they list as their skills and expertise. And I can see even a Microsoft Graph-powered set of recommendations, which in this case doesn't turn anything up. So I can search for, navigate to, or discover the information I need to get to work. Now we're going to be spending some time with the loyalty program. So let me dive into the loyalty program here. And this is the mobile view of a modern SharePoint team site. We'll see what it looks like in the web in just a moment. And on this, I can see the latest news from my team. I can see the activity that they've been conducting, so I can immediately get up to speed with what's happening with my team. And then I can dive into the specific content that this team maintains, its files, its lists, and its pages. So with that initial look at the mobile app, let's switch back to the browser and catch up with the similar experience in the browser. One of the small but significant investments we made in Office 365 last year was giving SharePoint a new home in Office 365. SharePoint is now a first-class service and experience, and when you click the SharePoint tile in the app launcher, you come to the SharePoint home. And the SharePoint home is where you can begin to navigate and discover content in Office 365. This is like your view of your world, the teams that you're on and the content you're working on. Notice in the left, we have links. This is our navigation here. And it's the same structure that we saw on the phone. I see featured links, which are those links pushed to me by my IT organization or corporate communications department. I then see links I've been to for sites I've been to recently. I see links to the sites that I've chosen to follow. So these are at the top because these are the ones I've intentionally said are important to me. It makes sense that they're at the top. So I can navigate to sites using these links or using the cards. I can choose to search for content. So again, I can search for loyalty and notice it starts producing results instantly, blazing fast, again, produced by Microsoft Graph. And then I can go to this page, which shows me people, sites, and content that match my query. I can filter based on certain types of results. And this, again, is a page of search results that is not just a set of results from an index. This isn't just saying there's a word match and here's the relevance. It's using the intelligence of the graph to figure out what might be most important to me. The order that they're in is based on the social distance between me and the content. Is it something I've worked on recently? That's very close. Is it something you've worked on and you and I are on the same team? Those things are going to be more important than some random document that someone else far in the organization worked on a year ago. So this set of results is informed by Microsoft Graph. I can also go back to, say, See All, which takes me to a more traditional SharePoint enterprise search experience here, including the classic results page. I can drill all the way back to the way it's looked like in the past in Office 365 with SharePoint, where I have experiences that include refiners that came originally from FAST. So I've got a whole variety of ways that I can search, but we've made sure that the default search experience is as fast and as likely to produce the most valuable results as possible. So SharePoint Home is first and foremost about navigating to, searching for content and expertise. But it's also about being informed, about knowing what's going on in my organization. So for example, I see here that I've got cards showing me recent activity on the sites that I frequently go to. So I can see the activity on busy sites. I can also see sites that Microsoft Graph is suggesting might be useful to me, again, based on looking at what my team members are following. And once again, just to emphasize, I will never see something I don't have access to. These are all things I have access to, but maybe haven't been to recently and might be useful to me. So I can navigate into a site using a link, like the loyalty program link on the left, or using one of these cards and jumping to that particular team site. So at this point then, what we've seen is the high-level purpose of a mobile intelligent intranet. It's to allow me to connect to people, process, and expertise in my organization. Now we're going to take the next level down and look at one of the core elements of that mobile and intelligent intranet, which is team sites. Last year was definitely the year for team sites. This year you're going to see a lot more around intranets and communication sites and business apps. We'll talk about that when we get to the roadmap. But team sites got completely overhauled last year with a beautiful new experience that delivers a lot of results for your team. First and foremost, and we'll demo each of these. First and foremost, we've made sure that your team has a beautiful, productive, dynamic site on your intranet. A team site is all about giving your group access to the resources it needs to get its job done. So every Office 365 group gets a SharePoint site. Now this is a technical point, so this may or may not matter to you, but when we first released Office 365 groups, the experience for them was in Outlook. So they were sort of Office 365 groups powering Outlook groups. And in Outlook groups, you could see a shared inbox and shared calendar, a shared notebook, and shared files. Those shared files were actually in SharePoint. Behind the scenes, there was a team site, and the only thing that we lit up was the document library. So you would never go to the SharePoint site. It was sort of hidden, but the files would show up in Outlook groups. So for those of you who are familiar with Outlook groups, that's what was happening. Now what we're doing is we're lighting up the rest of that team site with a modern, responsive, productive, and dynamic interface. So every group is, right now, we're starting to roll out into general availability, getting a modern, productive team site. And similarly, you can create a new SharePoint site that is a modern team site and is connected to a new Office 365 group in the background. So you can either, your existing groups will get sites, and every new group you get will get a site, and if you create a SharePoint site, you get a group. I sound a little bit like Oprah. You get a site, and you get a site, and you get a site. But that's the goal. We want to make sure that your team has the ability to work productively and connect to the resources it needs, so that you can share files and lists and pages, which are sort of the three core components of a team site, and really create a custom digital workplace to power the productivity of your team. Now, within that team site, we want to make sure that your team can stay up to date and on the same page. And you'll see how we can use the team site homepage to power that understanding of common goals and status, how you can use team news to communicate announcements and information, and how you can build pages to document processes, procedures, and ideas. One of the core elements of team sites is sharing files. And in a previous session about OneDrive, we focused heavily on your own individual OneDrive, where you can share files. But when it comes to team sites, It's about more than just sharing files. It's about being really able to manage those files in the context of your teamwork, which might include lots of files that you need to really understand and organize effectively. You might need to drive enterprise content management concepts that surface that content across your organization. You'll need to be able to discover expertise and content within the context of your team and bring files back and forth between different parts of Office 365 and external services. So we'll see a lot of the new capabilities of SharePoint team sites and their document libraries. But it's not just about files either, and we're going to demo these, so I'm going to save these builds for later. We also want to be sure that you can collaborate on data. Every team, almost every team has data. A list of contacts, a list of brainstorming ideas, you name it, there's all kinds of data. And typically, because many of us have been working with technology for many, many years or decades, a lot of that data work has been done in Excel. And Excel is fine, but what Excel's real strength is in analyzing and crunching and visualizing data. Excel isn't really just about storing data like a database. It can do it, but we've all seen limitations, particularly if you're using older versions of Excel. Only one person can edit the file at a time. There's no way to manage security on individual rows. There's no form experience. It's just entering data in cells. And I encourage teams to really look at what they're doing in Excel and ask, shouldn't that really be done in a SharePoint list? Because a SharePoint list gives you the grid. It gives you columns and rows, but it gives you way more than that, as we'll see. You can import and export items between different services and do things with them to model business processes. You can even take a SharePoint list and turn it into a mobile app with PowerApps. So we'll look at all those when we get to the demo. And finally, within a team site, you can coordinate and automate business processes. Whether a business process is as simple as approving a document or routing a document to the right place, whether it's more complex, like building a workflow to automate steps of a process, whether it's even taking something and integrating it with other parts of Office or building a mobile app out of it, or creating a custom form. All of these things take teamwork to the next level and really allow you to customize your interaction with your lists and libraries. So those are the things we're going to dig into in our demo. Let's actually jump in and do it here. So we're going to start on our loyalty program team site, which we saw on the mobile device, and now we're seeing in the browser. The browser obviously has more real estate, so it's a little bit of a different experience. But one of the core deliverables of the new SharePoint is that you only have to build things once. And what you build in the browser renders beautifully on a mobile device. It doesn't render identically, because a mobile device is a different form factor and it should be different, but the same content, the same functionality is there, and it also takes advantage of native mobile device capabilities like cameras and such. But here in the browser, we see our team site, and one of the things we wanted to do was make sure that the home page of the team site was dynamic and productive. So for those of you who've used SharePoint in the past, how many of you have team sites that the home page hasn't been changed since the day you built the team site? Right. Yeah, that's what happens. How many of you, in fact, still have those 5 tiles that say you should brand it and you should do this and that? Yeah, right? So that's what we saw. We saw a lot of teams weren't using their team site homepage. So we wanted to make sure that the default was already productive and dynamic. So you'll see, for example, starting at the bottom, an activity feed. I can come to my team site homepage and instantly see what's happened recently on my site and catch up with what's going on. We have what we call whoops, sorry, I clicked on something. We have the quick links section where we can pin important content. Whether it's on our site or elsewhere, we've got the ability to say, hey, this is something this team really needs. And notice it renders beautifully with thumbnails and such. And at the top of the page, we've got news. We've got the ability to keep your team truly informed and on the same page, whether you think about it as news or announcements or blogging. You can call it anything you want. It's really pages in your team site that surface on the home page of the site. So let's take a look at how we might use that. I'm going to go ahead and start a new news article here, and I'm going to call it Rewards Program Brainstorming. And I can click and I can add some text and say, let's give some thought to what we might want to give away to loyal fans and customers. I can not only add text, and notice I've got some formatting controls that I would expect from any rich web editing experience. I've got a gallery of web parts that let me add images, that let me add embedded content, like let's say a YouTube embed link. I've got documents and the ability to embed documents, straightforward links, Office 365 videos, Yammer and Power BI, and even third parties can extend the web parts and add custom capabilities into this gallery. So if you've ever used a modern web editing experience in the consumer space, things like Wix or Squarespace, or even LinkedIn's editing capability when you're creating an announcement or a post on LinkedIn, you'll see that this is just ridiculously easy. And if you're familiar with the old editing experience in SharePoint, you'll see right away just how you could sit down a 2-year-old and they would literally be able to pump out a web page here. It's just that easy. So the gallery is extensible and gives us all of our web parts. A lot more web parts will be coming this quarter already. You'll see that on the roadmap. So you're going to see some great new web parts coming from us. Let's take a look at a finished page. So up here, I've got the team charter. So when we established this team, we wanted to say, what's the vision of the team? What's its goals? How are we going to work together? And we put that together as a page, which for some reason is not rendering very well. This has been my day for weird demos. By the way, for those of you who were in my OneDrive session, I discovered one of the core issues was Windows Update ran during the session and restarted Explorer, which killed OneDrive and Edge and some other things. Okay. I'm not really sure why this page isn't rendering. It always does. So I'm going to go to another page. Let's take a look at this one and see what this has in it. So here's a finished page that has some text and some pictures. It has what we call a highlighted content part that is kind of like a query. We're able to run it and say, hey, bring back content that matches these parameters and embed them in this page. And let's take a look at some other pages here and see what else we've got. Since my normal page isn't happy with me right now. Here's a page that should have an embedded PowerPoint presentation. And one of the things that's just beautiful about this is this page renders perfectly well on the phone as well. So even if you've embedded a document or a Power BI dashboard or a video, those things are going to render beautifully on the phone. So all of that sort of coming from the idea that from the home page of the team site, we want to make sure that that home page is dynamic and productive and keeps your team informed. And it's a place that you can land on and instantly see what's going on this team, what do I need to know, what's happened since I was last here. And all of this renders on the phone. So back to the phone, I want to show a couple of pieces of this off. So once again, here's that team site. We see the news, we see the activity, and if we look at one of the news articles like that roadshow deck, we can see again that we have the exact same experience, including the embedding, and I can even open up it in PowerPoint from here. And we're just adding to iOS the ability to generate news from your device. So think about what happens when you're at an event like this. You want to send a report to your team and say, hey, I just learned about all these great new things that we can do with SharePoint. You notice the add link at the very top of the news section. I can click add, and I can actually start creating a news article while I'm on the bus home. So it says I can enter that, and then I can add some text. Learned a lot about team collab on SharePoint. And I can publish that news article straight from my phone. So before I even get back to the office, before I even get back to home, I've updated my team with important information. So this is the team site homepage, which is the landing page for my team on the intranet. This team site is connected to an Office 365 group, and you'll notice in the upper right corner, I can see information about the group and links to group resources. So for example, I can see how many members are in the group, and if I click that, it opens up Outlook Web Access where I can then manage the group membership itself. So let's give this a quick second. So from here, I can see exactly who's in the group. I can manage their roles and capabilities, whether they're an owner of the group or not, remove them, and I can do all that membership management from here. I also can jump to key resources from the group, like the group conversations. So I can get to that shared inbox that the group has. This is a great replacement for distribution lists. And if you want to put one thing at the very top of your list to look at as far as Office 365, it's how groups can replace and greatly enhance what we've all been doing for years with distribution lists. They're just so much richer. It is as close to a no-brainer as anything I can imagine doing for my organization. And at the top of the site, I also see what we call the group card. And this group card allows me to, again, navigate to other shared resources of that group. It's shared notebook, it's conversations, and it's calendar. Yes, the notebook is a one-note notebook. Every group, Office 365 group, gets a shared notebook that's powered by OneNote. Just for technical information, that notebook is actually stored in the team site, in the site assets library of the site. So behind the scenes, it is an asset of the team site. And that same notebook shows up. I can navigate to it. You can see it on my quick launch. So I can navigate to it from my team site. I can navigate to it from the Outlook group. I can navigate to it in Microsoft Teams. We're taking our services, like the notebook in OneNote and the files storage of SharePoint, and we're weaving them into each other. So you can work wherever and however you want and take advantage of the rich services. And if you and I work slightly differently, and you like filling in the notebook with OneNote application, and I like looking at the notebook from my team site, that's totally okay, because we're looking at the same thing, just going at it from different angles. Yes?
Typically, groups are for smaller number of employees. Intranets are typically for large number of employees, in my case, it's thousands.
Yep.
So how does this version of the intranet handle that? Right, so you're describing basing it on groups, but you can't do a group for that many people, right?
Right. So for those of you who are listening to this on the recording later, the question is really about how we think about team sites, which is what we're looking at right now, versus broader scoped, what many people would call intranet scenarios, where you're really looking at how the team interfaces with the whole organization, how the organization interfaces with teams, and how the organization interfaces with individuals. Those broader scopes are definitely part of the mobile intelligent intranet, but they're not team sites. So we'll come to that sort of a little bit later in the presentation, but the bottom line answer to your question is intranets have been built on SharePoint for a very long time. In fact, last year's Nielsen Norman Awards, SharePoint powered 9 of the 10 awardee intranets. And all of those capabilities that have existed in SharePoint, and been built into SharePoint over the last 15, 20 years still exist. So the classic capabilities of SharePoint still can power an intranet, and we'll talk about a very large one in a moment. We are in the process of building equivalent capabilities on top of the new experiences, and we'll see that on the roadmap this year. So as this year progresses, we'll be bringing the modern interface on a journey towards being a successor to the classic experiences. But until that's happened, the classic experience is still there, and you can build intranets on SharePoint. So we'll see that in a moment. So back to team sites here. We've been spending time on the team site homepage, and we've seen pages in that construct. Another key part of team sites is libraries, where you actually share files. Now, when we were in the OneDrive session, we sort of touched on files from the OneDrive perspective, and for those of you who weren't in that session, OneDrive, one of the key new things in OneDrive is that now you can use OneDrive to get to all of your files, your individual files, and your team sites. So it's like a file explorer for Office. Now, if you're going to share files with a team, and that team is going to be working on a regular basis on multiple files, it makes sense to share in a team site, because you've got the definition of who has access, that's the group, And all you have to do is put files there and everyone can get to it instead of having to share things one at a time. So sharing files in the context of a team site immediately gives you that benefit. But team sites, as we're seeing, are about far more than file sharing. They're about news, they're about pages, they're about content management, which we're going to be seeing now, and they're about lists and business processes that we'll be seeing later. So here we see a document library, and we're going to take some time looking at the details of this, but let's start by how you would add files to a document library. You can upload individual files or entire folders from the command bar, or you can drag and drop directly into this interface. So there are several good ways of getting files into SharePoint. And if you're going to want to be working on these files offline, you can choose to sync either an entire document library or a subfolder. Now, because this is a really big document library, I'm just going to take a subfolder here. So we'll take the trip report photos, and I'll go in there and sync just that one folder. And when I do that, I'm going to get that folder and any of its subfolders. So I'll go ahead and sync. And while it's syncing, the Activity Center shows me what it's doing. And behind the scenes, under Contoso, which is my organization, I see the trip report photos starting to come down. So this is the folder I've chosen to sync. We'll see it populate. In fact, it might already be done. And now I've got access to these files offline. And this gives me one more way of getting files into SharePoint. Now that it's in Explorer, I can copy and paste. I can drag and drop in Explorer, and it will synchronize back up to the team site. And at Ignite, we announced the preview of the new OneDrive Sync client that synchronizes SharePoint sites. It replaces the need for Groove.exe, a separate client for synchronizing SharePoint team sites. And this preview version will go into general availability very, very soon. So you'll be able to take the files from your team site on the road. Now, once you've got files in a document library, you're able to start working with them, which is great. You can share them. You can see commands for sharing and getting a link. You can do basic file management, including moving or deleting a document, renaming a document. And you can even copy files between not just folders in this library, but we're in the process of starting to release the ability to copy documents to other places in an Office 365, to other SharePoint sites. So this feature will be coming very, very soon, allowing you to copy things from this team, for example, to another team if you want to. So this is a sort of basic file management within the context of a team site. Now I'm going to jump over to another document library that has a few more documents in it here. And this is where we'll really see some of the functionality differences between OneDrive and a SharePoint document library. Here in the SharePoint document library, I see more than just the file name and the size and the author of a document. I see other properties of a document. And those properties allow me to describe the documents and to manage them more effectively. In this particular scenario, this is our articles library. This is where we collaborate on articles that we will eventually publish on the website. And so in this library, we've got a bunch of articles, and we can see who wrote them. We can see if and when they've been published to the website. That's the status and the publish date. And we can see the channel of the website that this article went to. So these are called columns in SharePoint language. You might think of them as attributes or properties or metadata. They're all just ways of helping me describe and work with these documents more effectively. Now, working with this metadata is super duper easy. I can use, if I have a document, like let's say Chinese fashion at scale here, I can open up an information panel that allows me to preview the document and work with the metadata right in the context of the library. I now can say, you know what, this really was actually written by someone entirely different. This was written by Chris. And I don't even have to click Save. It gets saved automatically. Well, in this case, it's a people picker, so it's a little different. But for example, status, I can change the status and notice it's saving immediately. For those of you who are used to older versions of SharePoint, you know that it used to create a pop-up or a completely separate page. It took you away from your work. And now it's just right in the context of your work. I can also see other great stuff in this information pane, including recent activity on this file, who it's shared with. So right now I can see that it's shared with my web content editorial team, and I can manage that sharing and add people, basic file properties, and again at the top, a preview of that document. So the information panel allows me to manage that metadata, and if I need to start looking for documents based on that metadata, I can filter. So let's say, for example, that I want to find any document that Mark Cashman was the author of. I can use these filters, and maybe I want to narrow it down to things he wrote in the fashion industry channel. So this is called the filters pane, and I can use it to filter down my documents. But I can also manage documents in place using columns. So this is very much like older versions of SharePoint and Excel, for example. I can sort by channel or status, for example. What wasn't possible before was the ability to group by a particular column. You would have to go and define a view that specified how you wanted to group. Let's say I want to see my documents based on their status. I can just say group by status, and I can see which documents have been submitted, which ones have been ingested, and which ones have been at various stages of this process. So now I've got a quick and easy way to really work with these documents if I'm responsible for maintaining the process that moves them through editorial. If this is a view that I want to remember so I can easily get back to this view, I can save that view straight from the view selector. So I can go into the view selector, click Save, give it a name, whoops, which I've already created in the previous event. So I can create the view, and once I've saved that view, I can then choose it and get to that right away. Again, without having to jump to a separate page and a sort of weird, esoteric, old interface that made you see a million things. I just want to save the view, so I do it right where I choose the view. So we've made it much easier for you to organize and manage large quantities of files with all of these capabilities of deciding how the metadata helps you get to the documents and work with the documents more effectively. A lot of us have to move documents through processes. And one of the things we've done that supports that is the ability to actually drag and drop between groups. So for example, let's say that I have just received this this 2016 editorials, Emmys document, and I now want to assign it to my team as ingested. I don't even have to edit the metadata. I can just drag it and drop it into ingested, and it changes the metadata. Now, how easy is that? That's super duper cool. I'm going to drag it back. Yeah, thank you. You're allowed to applaud. Yeah, I like that one a lot too. Another thing that used to be particularly challenging is if you have a lot of documents, there's usually one or two that are super important for the users of that library. In this particular library, it's our editorial guide. We want to make sure that that's easily accessible by anyone who comes to this library. I can take that editorial guide, select it, and I can pin it to the top so that it's available at the top of the library for anyone to get to. Remember, I also can add it to my quick links on the home page if it's so important that it belongs on the home page. So here on the home page, I can choose, whoops, where's my quick links part? Oh, I edited this home page and removed the quick links. The quick links part's there by default. I just removed it from the site. So that's yet another way to work that way. So if I go back to my by status view, we see that. And notice the pin to top actually is by view, which makes sense. There may be, in this view, I need to see one set of important documents. In another view by customer, I might want to see a different set of documents at the top.
When did you say this is coming?
So modern document libraries, which were actually released last spring. This experience is in sites right now. The modern team site as a whole, as a package, is coming to groups right now. So if you're in first release, you already have it. If you're in general availability rings, it's rolling out like literally now. Yeah, so his question is, do existing libraries retain their old look? By default, if the library hasn't been, if you haven't done, let's use a technical term. If you haven't done funky things with the library, it will actually go to the modern experience. But there are certain rules that will keep it in classic if, for example, you've used a type of extension that wouldn't render in the modern view. So we try to give you the new experience unless there's something that we know is going to be problematic in the new experience. Once we give you the modern experience, in the lower left corner, there's always a way to revert back to classic. So let's say you've got some capability that just isn't working for you in the modern experience, you can revert to classic. Now, over time, we're working on a daily basis to ensure that the modern experience has feature parity with the classic experiences for all the things our customers are actually doing with those experiences. But we're going to give you the ability to revert to classic in the meantime. Yes?
About branding, we've been trying to brand these and it's problematic.
Yes, we have not yet fully released the capabilities that will power branding. That is definitely something that's coming. We talked at Ignite about that, and I'll mention it in the roadmap section. It's just not there today. Yes?
Yeah, so how does when you create a new document and the metadata, you have metadata required, how does that experience work? I noticed that that's a little tougher. That you can tag documents on upload, and then after the fact, but let's say we go to the new icon, make a new Word document, you have 3 required fields.
Yeah, so what he's talking about is a situation where if you have required metadata, so when you define, oh, by the way, let me take a little bit of a step backwards. Notice how also very easy it is to add columns to this library, which is voila. Now, if you go to more, you will get to the classic page where you could set all the properties of a column, including whether it's required or not. And if you have required metadata, when you create a document in the library, you have to fill in the metadata. But what if you're dragging and dropping a file into the library, or you're putting it in a folder that you've synced and it's getting synchronized up? How does that required metadata work? So that's the question for the sake of the recording. Chris, do you know the current rules on that, by any chance?
We haven't changed them yet. So in the modern experience, if you upload a document and it's missing metadata, it's going to flag it in the information pane for you, but it allows you to check it in. Because the classic behavior, the document was never checked in, so people might think others could see the document, and it effectively was invisible. It's probably fair to say we may have overshot the runway with making it too easy to get the document in without penalty, and nothing I can share, but we're actively working on about 3 different solutions to that, which we should hope to land later this year.
So for the sake of the recording, who wouldn't have heard Chris, if someone uploads a document into a library that has required metadata, unlike the classic experience, the document will appear. In the classic experience, it was only the person who uploaded it could see it until the required metadata was entered. Now the document will appear, but you will need to, the next interaction you have with that document, you're going to have to fill in the required metadata for that to be committed. And there's more coming on that. Yes, so his question is, what about default values for the metadata? When you create, let's take a simple example here. Let's say we're going to add a date. When you create a date with the new sort of super easy interface for users, you're just basically giving a column a name. To get more control over exactly what a column is, you can go to the more command. And the more command takes you into, for those of you who are used to SharePoint, the more classic experience, where you can pick additional types of columns. You can set whether it's required or not, and you can set default values. All those things that were always there are still there. We've just made it as easy as possible for users to do what they do 80% of the time, which is add a column of these types with a certain name, and that's all they need. So let's keep moving here, because I want to make sure we don't run out of time and just keep track of your question for the moment. So I'm actually going to cheat since I stopped to answer questions and make sure that I've hit the things I really wanted to hit here on files. There's a few things I know I wanted to touch on. Okay, so we've looked at creating, uploading, and copying files. We've talked about organizing and finding files. And this concept of metadata and columns is really what is the first step in empowering content management and allowing an organization to make this content reusable. And content management in the end is all about not what you're doing with the content now, but what someone's going to do with it later. It's about you or someone else finding that original piece of content and being able to answer a question or to be able to inform a decision and more intelligent actions later. And in order to make content findable and discoverable, in order to harvest the knowledge that's in that content, metadata helps that happen by having columns that specify information about a document, for example. And content management allows you to use taxonomy, for example, to create a set of hierarchical terms that users can tag documents with. And on the note of taxonomy, in November, we released SharePoint Server 2016, Feature Pack 1, and one of the capabilities in that is hybrid taxonomy. So now, for the first time, if you're using SharePoint Server 2016, your on-premises taxonomy can be synchronized with Office 365. You will manage it in Office 365 from that point forward, but it gets copied back to on-prem, and so when users are tagging things either on-prem or in the cloud with managed metadata columns, that is now unified, which is a big, big step for us. Discover expertise and related content. We talked a little bit in the portal section about learning more about someone from Delve and from the people experience in the SharePoint mobile app. This also applies right inside of your lists and libraries in SharePoint. So for example, we see here that, whoops, that doesn't have an author. Let's find one with an author here. That this 2016 Emmys document was written by Katie Dundas. If I want to learn more about Katie, I can actually, whoops, let me hover over that, and I get what's called a people card. And a people card gives me information about Katie, including ways of contacting her, again, her organizational information, and I can see a quick summary of it here, or I can see her full organizational chart. I'll very soon be able to see what groups she belongs to, and I can see documents that she's contributed to this group or documents she has throughout Office 365. So I can learn more about her, I can discover information that she's been working on, assuming I have access to it. These are called people cards. And you'll see them wherever there is a people column in a SharePoint library or even in a SharePoint list. Great, great new stuff there that, again, personally working in a large organization, I find to be incredibly productive. One other note here about getting documents into and out of SharePoint document libraries is the integration we have between Microsoft Flow and SharePoint document libraries. Whoops, I thought I had the screenshot of that. So I'll just have to describe it, I apologize. Microsoft Flow is a technology that exists within Azure that applies to all of the Microsoft Cloud and external clouds as well. And one of the things it allows you to do is connect different services. So for example, I could say whenever a user adds a file to Dropbox, I want to move that into Office 365 SharePoint document library. I can connect services and move things back and forth between those services. There are consumer services you might be familiar with that do a similar sort of thing, services like if this, then that, or Zapier. This has now come to Office 365 in the form of Microsoft Flow. And in Flow, I can create definitions that allow me to perform actions on document libraries, including getting things into and out of those document libraries from other services out there in the intranet. So that's document libraries. We spent a lot of time on that, but we need to make sure we move on to lists and data. So let's take a quick look at some of the core points on lists and data. Now, a document library is a list, so you'll see a lot of familiar elements when we go into a list, like my department contacts list. We see columns, we can add columns. We see the information panel that allows me to select an item and modify its metadata. We see the filters pane that allows me to drill down in this list and find specific information. We see a command bar with commands that allow me to do things like export this list to Excel, which is a very popular thing to do, sort of dump it out and hand it off to someone. And we see that these command bars are in fact extensible. This particular list and site has DocuSign added to it, so we can perform actions with DocuSign. I can create new items just by clicking new, and it will bring me to a form that allows me to enter a new item. I can also choose to quick edit the items. And this is where you can immediately see how easy it would be to drive adoption of a SharePoint list as opposed to an Excel file. If people are used to working in Excel, they're not going to have any problem with quick edit. They just need to know to click it. And this allows them to, for example, to copy and paste information from an existing Excel worksheet into a list, and then from that point forward, work with it as a SharePoint list. And we see the same capabilities we saw in document libraries for working with metadata columns, including grouping, sorting, and filtering by those metadata columns. We see people cards. So if we need to learn more about someone on a list, we can do that. So we've got some of those same capabilities we saw in document libraries. As with document libraries, we can use Flow to bring information into a list or take information out of a list. At Ignite, one of the examples we showed was when a new record was added to Dynamics, we wanted to be able to add information into a SharePoint list. And that's certainly possible with Flow. Flow basically says when a new item's added here, add it over here, and you can perform any actions on different services in your world. And you can take those experiences that are in lists and libraries and turn them into mobile applications with PowerApps. So let me show you these last two things that I just discussed in another list. And this list is our rewards brainstorm. You might remember when I created news, I said we need to think about what we're going to give away to our most loyal fans. And I created a list so that my team could contribute ideas. And in this list, there's what we might want to give away, who submitted it, whether it's something that's we would give away for free or we would somehow manage some other way. And then people can vote on ideas and decide how much they like it. And we can then also categorize these. So this list exists within SharePoint. It's a custom list, pretty typical example. And I want to do two things with it. I want to make it possible for my users to interact with this list without having to go to SharePoint. I want them to have this on their phone. I want them to be able to interact with it as a mobile app. That is what PowerApps is for. And PowerApps allows you to create a custom mobile application with screens connected to data and with interactions with an interface that's very similar to PowerPoint or some other and other similar Microsoft products. Now, we don't have time to demonstrate PowerApp in full. That's going to be done in other sessions. What I'm going to do instead is jump straight to the result and show you the PowerApp we created on my phone. Now, I haven't had time recently to log into this, so hopefully the authentication will be smooth. Downloading updates to the app here. So this is the Power App that was created for this list. There's a home page that was created, and you can see information about me on it. This is pulling the information from Microsoft Graph. And I've got the ability to browse ideas, and I am seeing that SharePoint list with a very custom experience. Now, I could also interact with this list in the SharePoint mobile app. So in the SharePoint mobile app, I can go to Rewards Brainstorm, and the SharePoint mobile app has the native rendering that allows me to, for example, add a new item and interact with that. But this is sort of the default. If I want to make it truly engaging, PowerApps allows me to do that. I can create icons for different sorts of ideas. I can allow someone to vote up and down an idea. So I'm going to vote up custom fitted backpack by touching the like button. And notice it just increased to 18. And if we were to jump back to my computer right now, we would see that the SharePoint list has been updated just that fast. I also can submit a new idea. So let's say I'm wanting to really drive our loyal customers to be super, super fans of ours. So I think we should actually give them iPhones. Now, I know that's a big gift, but yeah. And just in case someone doesn't know what an iPhone is, I'm going to take a picture of one. So here, we're seeing me use a native capability of my device, the camera, and be able to incorporate that into a SharePoint list. So I'm going to save that photo. Oh! An error? Well, we'll cross our fingers and see if it's going to work anyway. The joy of demos that aren't always tested as we change our flights. All right, so we've seen the Power App. Let's jump back to the computer. And I'm going to switch into one of my views, which is to look at how feasible ideas are. One of the columns is feasibility. And for example, we can assign something to be a great idea or needs more review or just not possible. And notice, iPhones is already on the list. It's marked as it's unassigned because that's the next step in the process is someone has to evaluate this idea. But we can see the idea and we can see that Dan submitted it. So now, if I were sort of using SharePoint the way many of us do, I might choose to open up this item and interact with the metadata here and say, okay, you know what, this feasibility is whatever my choice is. So I could interact with the metadata within the list. But I want, the next step in this custom collaboration experience, to allow me to work without even having to go to SharePoint. I want to be notified when someone submits an idea, and I want to be able to tag it on the fly. And that is sort of an automated process that I want to start generating. When a new idea is submitted, I want to get an alert. I want to be able to interact with the new item and save it back to SharePoint. It's a process that I want to transform. It's a workflow. And when we start thinking about automating processes, transforming business processes, and automating activities, that is, again, where Microsoft Flow comes into play. So Microsoft Flow is not only connecting services that we've mentioned a couple of times, but it's also allowing me to model processes and automate activities. So I can create a flow that sends me an email and allows me to interact with the item. Let's, in fact, jump and look at the flows that we've defined. I created this before the session, so hopefully I'll be able to get in and show you that flow. So this is the flow I created. When a new SharePoint item is submitted, it does a conditional evaluation to see whether we're going to give it away as a free product. And if we're going to give it away as a free product, it's going to send an email to me with a specific subject line and what are called user options. We'll see what these user options are in just a moment. And once I interact with that item, it is going to update the item in the SharePoint list. So it's going to go back to the SharePoint list and update it. So that's the flow, and you can see it's very much a visual kind of thing. It's not terribly difficult to create. So I'm going to now, from here, jump into email, and hopefully, it can sometimes take a few moments, but hopefully the email will have arrived. There we go. Looks like it has. So I see here in my inbox, I see here in my inbox the new idea, iPhones, and if it hadn't crashed, I'd see the photo right there. And I can interact with that idea. These are those user options. So right in my email, I can say, yeah, this is a great idea. It posts that back to SharePoint, and so when we go back to SharePoint and update that rewards brainstorm list, let me refresh the page. We now see iPhones listed as a great idea. So thank you. So I started by defining a list where I can track data, and I can share it with my team. I then said, you know what, I want to create a custom application for this list, a custom interface, a way of interacting with it. And I did that with a PowerApp that allowed me to put that experience onto a device. So the work can be done where work is being done. Wherever that user is, they've got a great idea, they can submit it right then. And then I wanted to automate the process that happens after that and used Flow to put that data where I need it, which is in my inbox, and when I interact with it, it goes back to SharePoint. How many of you can go back to your office and do that in Excel tonight? Right? Yeah, right. The developer in the back of the room goes, I can. Yeah. Open a Visual Studio and call me in 4 days, right? No, seriously though. This is the kind of thing that really helps SharePoint lists shine. It helps you see that it's not just about storing the data and being able to edit it. It's about being able to do stuff with it. It's about being able to turn it into solutions that power your productivity and move your team forward. So that's what it's all about when it comes time to working on lists and automating processes, building PowerApps and such. The last point I want to make, I'm going to talk through, which is taking this to the next level of the broader story of coordinating and automating processes. We saw one example here, but there's many other examples, including simple approvals. If all you need to do is manage approval, SharePoint has that built in. There's approvals right in the SharePoint document library. But if you want to get more sophisticated and have business logic infused, Microsoft Flow is something you will be able to use to generate those kind of approval workflows. We also have routing that's been in SharePoint for a long time. And what routing does is allow you to create what's called a drop library, where someone can drop a document in, And then, based on rules, that document is moved to another location in the team site. It's used in there's a lot of sort of customer service and legal sorts of scenarios, so that the end user doesn't have to think and can just drop something in and the document goes where it needs to go. We can build and manage workflows. We just looked at an example of using Microsoft Flow to create workflows, but we still have full support for SharePoint 2010 and 2013 workflows. So those are still there. You can still use SharePoint Designer to create workflows, and yes, it's still free. But I encourage you to think about Microsoft Flow as the successor to SharePoint Designer workflows. And if something can be done in Microsoft Flow, do it in Microsoft Flow. That's the investment that Microsoft is making. It's not just a SharePoint thing, it's a Microsoft-wide thing. So look at the requirements of your process, and if you can do it with Microsoft Flow, do. If you can't, we still have all the capabilities we've always had. And there are third parties that also deliver solutions that make it easy to build and deploy workflows. We can create custom mobile apps with PowerApps, and we can create custom forms. We saw an example of that in PowerApps. And what will be coming this year is the ability to take that idea of a custom form that we saw in the Power App and make it the default experience in the browser. So the same idea of designing a custom interaction, a custom screen, will be how you can also work with it on your phone. So to go through a couple of screenshots that will catch me up here. We talked about Flow. We saw the option buttons as an example. Here's an example of Power Apps being used to create a custom form within the browser. And this is the kind of thing you will see come to SharePoint team sites later on this year. And that's why we also believe that Microsoft Flow and Power Apps are the successor to InfoPath. InfoPath is still around. It's going to be supported for far longer than I wish it would. We're not dropping support for it. But what we're doing is giving you a new capability that's built cloud first and mobile first, which InfoPath clearly wasn't, because it was built before we ever really cared about the cloud and mobile devices. So we're giving you a new capability that's built to do what we needed to do in this decade, and we're building capabilities into it that will take it forward as the successor to InfoPath. So the same guidance applies. If you need a custom form, if you need something that you would normally do with InfoPath, look first to see if Power Apps and Flow can do it for you. If they can, use it. If not, you still got the old ways of doing it. But keep an eye on Power Apps and Flow because they're going to be developing really, really quickly. And what can be done in 2 months will be different than what can be done today, and so forth and so on. So each time you evaluate a use case, look at the newest things that are happening in our cloud and how we can make that easier and easier and easier for you to achieve. So those are our productive and dynamic team sites. And we have customers using them for all kinds of capabilities, but the one I really wanted to highlight to her question earlier is about Intranet. Delta Airlines has 260,000 employees and retirees and partners that need to connect to people, content, and expertise and process for Delta. And so they built an intranet on Office 365 using out-of-box capabilities together with partners and custom-developed solutions. And they now have 80,000 plus employees active on a day-to-day basis. And they basically went from on-prem to the cloud overnight. They didn't build it that fast, but they made a huge switch and brought tens and actually hundreds of thousands of users to Office 365. And why did they do it? Because the cloud gives them business value. It allows people to connect with expertise and content from mobile devices. That was one of their number one reasons for moving to the cloud. It allows them to increase efficiency, to automate processes, and to get the work done where people are actually working. It gives personalization, the ability for the intranet to know who I am and surface content that's right for me. And it allowed them to replace antiquated technology. Now, I'm not a big fan of replacing old technology with new just because. The first 3 reasons are super important. The last reason is important when antiquated technology is no longer supported or costs a fortune, which a lot of antiquated technology often can do. So those are 4 very, very good reasons for moving to the cloud. Delta did it, and it's been a wonderful success for them. And if you want to look at an example of an intranet case study, that's up in Office 365's Case Study Center, and you can look at that one specifically. We also have customers like Marks & Spencer and Booz Allen Hamilton and many others that will be that we shared with you last year and we'll share with you this year their success stories. So we've looked at simple and powerful file sharing in an earlier session on OneDrive. We've seen how that carries into team sites. We've looked at the mobile intelligent intranet and what we've done to put the intranet in your pocket with the mobile app and give you a way of navigating to and discovering information with SharePoint Home, and spend a lot of time on team sites. The story goes on, and there are other sessions that will talk about what we've done to ensure that you can extend these experiences to build custom solutions, either as an information worker or as a developer. And we've built what's called the SharePoint framework, a new way for developers to use very common, well-known tools and frameworks to build solutions on top of SharePoint. So that's an additional option for them to build cloud-first and mobile-first solutions on SharePoint. We have talked a lot about security, privacy, and compliance at this event. We'll have another session that Chris is doing tomorrow on how to keep your OneDrive and SharePoint content secure. And Chris will also be doing a session tomorrow on SharePoint Server 2016 and hybrid capabilities. Because while we are innovating in the cloud, and that's where we're going to be doing things fastest and where you will get the most value for sure, we also want to be sure that we help our on-premises customers continue to be successful and make the move into the cloud at a pace that's right for them. So we want you to know what's possible in the cloud, so you can look at each team and each use case and say, you know what, this belongs in the cloud for these reasons, or this belongs on premises for these reasons, and let's connect them and unify them as much as possible for end users, for IT pros, and even for developers, so that we can create a smooth journey for you towards the cloud with SharePoint Server 2016 and hybrid experiences. So there are sessions throughout the Tech Summit that address these topics. Each Tech Summit is a little different, so some summits don't have all the sessions, but they will all be there and will be recorded in the Tech Summit site. So you'll be able to get to recordings of sessions that you missed, or even sessions that might not be offered here in Chicago, although most of them are offered here. So those are the topics I encourage you to check the recordings out for. Their presentations will also be available for you on the Tech Summit site. A small note, the decks you're seeing me do and Chris do right now are brand new. We've revised them for January. And so if you go today and look for the decks, you might see the old ones. We'll be getting the new ones into the system very, very quickly. And one very specific resource I want to point you to, and Chris will mention this tomorrow as well, is the SharePoint and OneDrive Security White Paper. If you want to know what we're doing to ensure that your data is secure and private and compliant and under your control and backed by a robust set of platform security, that white paper goes into all the details, and Chris will be doing an awesome job of setting that out tomorrow. So I promised you we'd wrap up with roadmap. What's coming? This last year, we did a lot. I think those of you who are familiar with SharePoint, those of you who use the classic experiences on-prem or in the cloud can see a huge amount of difference. It's pretty extraordinary, but we're not resting. There's a lot more coming. Some of the key things I'll call out in the roadmap are additional developments in team news so that you're able to create and consume news wherever you are. One of the innovations we've just released recently that I wanted to highlight in that regard is roll-ups of team news. You know, it's great that I can look at the news on a specific team site, but I don't want to have to go to every single site to read the news. And within the SharePoint app, I can go to News. On iOS, we've built this experience, and what this is doing is this is giving me a roll-up of news from all the sites oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. I hit the big flashing red button instead of the green one. So this is the news experience inside of iOS, and this is showing me all the news from across my team sites. We even see that article that I added just a few moments ago. So if I want to get up to date while I'm on the go, I can go through and see news from across my organization. This same experience will be coming to other mobile platforms and other places in SharePoint and OneDrive as well. More people experiences. We're releasing sync of team sites in the very, very, very near future. Additional web parts so that your pages can be as beautiful and functional as possible. That's all coming currently into first release and into general availability in the very near future as well. And these are some of the things we've talked about publicly that are going to be coming in the next coming months. Broader scopes of news, as we mentioned, additional analytics so you can understand the reach and impact of your work. And we're going to be starting to take the journey out of team sites, to her point, to sites that are not just about how you work with your team and how your team works with itself, but how your team works with the organization. How do you tell the organization what you're doing? Your intranet site. How does your organization tell you as an employee what's important and what to do and connect you with processes? That's going to be something we start talking about more in the first half of this year. You'll be hearing us talk about communication sites, and you can see an example here. Communication sites are really about your presence to the organization and your organization's presence to you. You can see it's highly brandable. I don't see the standard SharePoint navigation there. I don't see the quick launch. I see a beautiful custom site. And very, very functional additions that allow you to connect people to resources, content, and expertise that they need. And those communication sites, just like team sites, will by default render beautifully in SharePoint Mobile. So that's going to be one of the big things. There's a lot more coming. I know you'll be really happy with where we're going. And for your next steps, I encourage you to stay in close contact with us, follow the blogs, submit your feedback on user voice, interact with us, the product group, as well as with each other in the technical community, and don't ever hesitate to reach out and contact us directly. We're here to make your productivity skyrocket and to do everything we can to increase the velocity of work in your organization. So please do stay in touch. If you've got questions, I'll take them, but I'm going to go ahead and let the recording stop so that we can interact directly. So with that, thank you, and let's turn to questions. Oh, yeah, thank you. All right, there's a first question here, I think.
I just wanted to know, all the features that you've just shown, they're going to be available for on-premise as well?
Oh, good question. So Chris will talk about the on-premise roadmap tomorrow, but the general answer to your question is that we will innovate in the cloud first, and we will bring as much as we can to on-prem. Now, there are certain things we can't bring, but we can connect you to. So for example, Microsoft Graph and Delve with hybrid search, we can connect your on-prem service to that. But we can't bring it to on-prem, it's just the compute power is not reasonable. Things like user experiences and some of these business functional things we will be bringing to on-prem over the course of time. It's just a matter of sort of queuing up the engineering work. So we announced that we will be doing feature packs. We delivered the first one in November, and that brought a revised interface to OneDrive, for example. And we'll be doing as much as we can over the next months and years to bring this on-prem. It will be a journey. It will take time, but it is our goal to make sure that the environment on-prem is as successful as possible. So all I can say is, yes, we want to bring it. It will take time, but we'll be bringing as much as we can. Yep.
In the spirit of integrating the apps and stuff, I have not been able to figure out a way to help users, what am I trying to say, create that metadata at the point of creation on a document, and it's stopping pretty much everybody I know from using document libraries. Is there some cross-communication there between Word and Excel that you can get that document at the point?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, one of the things you want to do is make sure that users understand kind of two pieces about working with metadata. One is obviously they can work within the document library, but that's not what you're trying to do. Let me go ahead and open this in Word, and let's see. Whoops, let me actually do this from my articles library. That's a much more interesting one. Web content. Hold on, I have to go to the right site here. SharePoint, web content editorial. I'm just going to go to, I clicked the wrong one. Web content editorial. I want to find that library that had more interesting metadata here. So here's my articles library, and here's an article. Let's open this up. And I think the number one thing you should teach users about dealing with document metadata is to go to what we call the backstage, but it's basically the file menu. And in the file menu, under Info, you've got the properties of the document up here, and you've got additional metadata down here, including this author column, which is in fact the one on my list. If I chose show all properties, I get things like the channel, the status. So this is the place I can interact with those directly inside of Word. And so this is one place I would encourage you to recommend, and this works in all of the Office applications. A second and related thing that is true in Word specifically is I can embed the metadata directly in Word. So if, for example, I want someone to input the channel that this article is going to go on, I can insert what's called a quick part. And I can put status there. Oh, now I have two status columns. I'm not sure which. There we go. Oh, that's right. Well, yeah, so let me just change it to status. So I can embed with what's called a quick part a column from my list directly into the document. And if you think about the idea of creating a Word template, the Word template can be wired up with this already in it. And so this is my absolute favorite way of doing it in Word. Someone just has to invest 5 seconds to create a good template first. The second and the more general way to do it across Office applications is the Backstage. Are there other ways, Chris, that you would recommend that she think about for?
No, I mean, those are the ones that I can steer you to now. I can say that, as you might imagine, you're not the first and not the last person to raise these issues to us. So we're definitely working on them. You know, we're mindful of at least 5 different ways to make it easier to add metadata in bulk, make sure that you capture more places to capture at the time of creation. Working at the best way to kind of enrich. If you want to take that document information panel, which historically we used to use a lot inside the Office rich files, working at the best ways to empower that for metadata. If people don't want to go to the Backstage, people want to stay in context. You've heard those scenarios. I don't have a date. Definitely working on all of those.
Sorry, related to the point, what about Word, Excel, and PowerPoint Online? So if we go to the new button there, this will give you a new document.
Yeah, the way that those capabilities work across Office, it may seem like it's a simple one to turn it on. We want to engineer it once and have it work across as many of the client applications as possible. That is web and rich.
And mobile.
And mobile.
Yeah, so the answer is it doesn't exist now, but we definitely know it needs to. Yeah. Yeah. Believe me, yeah, and that's good. We hear that, and it is understood. The other thing I would mention is you saw Flow. That's sort of another way. You saw the option buttons. If a document's created, email the author and say, hey, what data goes where. That's one way to do it. So, in some situations it'll align perfectly with your needs. In other situations it might be a little kludgy. And then there's third-party solutions that do these things, and it's all extensible. So, for example, I have some customers in the defense contracting space where they've created a custom add-in for Word that does everything you would ever want it to do. We have a solution called Matter Center that's designed for legal organizations that interacts with both Outlook and Word. So wherever you're working with the document, you end up tagging it the way you need to. So at the extreme, you guys can build it. At the user-facing stage, you've got Backstage, quick parts right now, Flow as a possibility, and yes, we'll be bringing more and more. That's a good point. The content organizer, which is the routing thing, can run rules and add metadata. And there's one other super easy way that I always forget, which is folder default column values. So imagine you've got a letters to customers library, and one of the columns of metadata is the customer the letter was to. Now, you can create a folder for each customer in that library. And in each folder, you can say, for the folder for Microsoft, the default value for the customer column is Microsoft. And that means whenever someone puts a document in that folder, it automatically gets tagged. Now, so that's one way of doing it. Now, let's say you wanted to see all letters to all customers. One of the options when you create a view is called Show Items Without Folders. And if you set that on a document library, it makes the containers disappear and gives you a flat list of all the things that is contained there and all the metadata. So the folders can be used at creation time to drive the metadata, but maybe your read time interaction with that library is what I call a flat view that collapses the folders into one single view. So that, there are a couple of workarounds. We know there's plenty of room for us to grow, for sure. Other questions? Yep.
So I'm familiar right now with groups having a library, a SharePoint library.
Yep.
Designed for file storage. I was currently for groups, the permissions are flat for the most part. It's everybody's a member.
Yes.
For the owners who can basically just do higher level things.
Right.
To the
Okay, so absolutely. So if you think about the way SharePoint has always been, you had the owners, visitors, and members groups that had certain permissions. You could create your own. You could scope permissions at the site, folder, list, library, or item level. All of that still exists, and you can go back to Classic for it all. Now we're building these modern experiences, and we need to get there, and we will. So that's the short answer to your question. What we have right now is a modern experience attached to a group, and you're absolutely right. As of today, the experience is in the modern team site, you're in the group, and everyone in the group has basically edit access to the site. Now that may not be appropriate for all workloads, and we completely understand that. And we're in the process now of rolling out the controls that will allow you to say, you know, in my team site, I want this other team to have visibility, but only read access. And that is coming. It's like literally rolling out now-ish into first release. And at the sort of lowest level, you still have the ability to share. So when you go in and you share, whether you do it with a link or whether you go into the information panel and use the sharing and I add people, you can see that I've got the ability to set permissions. This is, in fact, what you're used to from old SharePoint. So when you get down to a folder or an item, it's already like SharePoint used to be. It's only at the site level that it's not currently the same, and we're in the, I mean, literally like now fixing that. Yeah.
So if you do some site level, it still doesn't change the group entity, because that's, I think, the part I want to think.
Yeah. What?
DL is, you know,
Yeah.
you're saying now a group is really kind of becoming DL, so then, okay, now what happens now to a team site?
The way to think about it, since you're clearly used to SharePoint, is the members of the group in Office 365 are members of the SharePoint members group. And the owners of the group are members of the SharePoint owners group. So that's what's already happening. Now what we're going to give you the ability to do is to modify who else might be in those groups. Maybe your president needs to be an owner for whatever reason, or to deal with that readers group. And so you're going to be able to go in and say, hey, this other Office 365 group has read access. What will basically be happening at that point is the members of that group get added to the readers group on that site. With a nice interface. It's actually, so you guys are going to love the interface. It's kind of like this, where what you're doing is, we saw it in the OneDrive even better, but wait, where'd my permissions go? Where it's going to be in the information panel. You'll be able to go here, and you'll be able to add a person and sort of click a permission. It's really nice. It's not going to take users into a dark space.
But if you use, like, I guess I'm wondering if there's so much additional group functionality, like in conversations, so now what happens to that read-only group that you just added?
It's only for SharePoint.
Conversations?
Yeah, SharePoint is the only service right now that understands granular permissions.
Okay, so everything else will still be your core group.
Right.
For communications and outlook.
Right.
Stuff like that. Okay.
That's exactly right.
There's so many places where that it will
Yeah.
equal it into weird ways and how internal teams are doing stuff there.
Yeah, so planner tasks and Microsoft Teams conversations, you have to be in the group and you have full participation in those two services. Yeah, SharePoint will continue to be what it's always been as far as allowing a wide variety of permissioning scenarios. We just need to give you an interface to let you do it. It's all the capabilities are already there. Paul?
So if I was to hold your feet to the fire, not to erect a beautiful Hawaiian for the manager, I need a communication site by the end of the month. Am I doing that in a function template, or am I going to do that in a team site and hope that it doesn't change?
Yeah, so communication sites today. I'll tell you what I'm doing for our SharePoint team at Microsoft. I wanted a way for us to communicate outside to the rest of the organization. I chose to use a team site and make it a public group. That's what I chose to do. It's not going to give me branding, but it gives me news, it gives me activities, it gives me a lot of things that allow me to share information. It's not as slick as what communication sites will be, but it's pretty darn good. And I chose to do that as opposed to using a classic SharePoint site and putting people into this quite old environment. So you could do it either way, and as a developer, you obviously could build on top of Classic to do stuff as well. But personally, I chose to create a team site with a public group. Now, that will not, as far as I know, I would not, let me put it this way, I would not expect that to magically turn into a communication site when we release communication sites. Yeah, it'll be a different site definition and template, and I will have to migrate some content at that point in time. But in the meantime, I have a pretty darn good looking, very functional, mobile, it goes into SharePoint Mobile beautifully, experience for my little intranet site.
So what I'm seeing though is the home page is a wiki page, and then sometimes when I click add, I get a modern page, and on the page of this library, I have the new, and I can choose an old-fashioned web part page. So I expect that scenario lesson going forward.
Well, so modern pages, so let me take, you sort of asked two questions. One is editing the home page. Well, someone else is doing it, that's interesting. Editing the home page, if you don't see it now, you will. You can see the edit buttons here. So we're gonna let you edit the home page, and it will allow you to add the same web parts that you would have if you created a news article or a SharePoint page. You created an old school team site?
Well, they did, yeah.
Right.
It's the top level site of tenants, right?
Okay.
New tenant, it's not a group site.
Right. So if you have an existing old school team site, you can create new pages, and you can add web parts to them. What I'm not sure, and you might know better than I if we flighted yet, is the ability to mark that as the home page. And if that's not there now, that is absolutely coming.
That is flighted.
Okay, there you go.
If you just create a generic page,
Make it the home page.
it goes into that page library, and then inside page library, there's a setting there. Make this the home page, and it takes over. I actually do it in mine. I've had a demo of 365 for 5 years, which is not governed by Microsoft, and that came onto it like 4 or 5 months ago. So.
That's always part of the trick, is we're changing things so fast that I don't know what I have that you don't have, and it's like, we have the same challenge as you do trying to keep up with things. It's like, gosh, did we flight that, and where is it flighted? And yeah. So that's the story. Now you, I think, had some additional questions gloming onto that? For communication sites? I can't give you a timeline. Let me put it this way. Let me put it this way. We announced it at Ignite. Rarely does Microsoft announce things that are more than 6 to 9 months away. So, that's, I can't promise you, especially because this might be being recorded. I would anticipate it being months, not weeks, and months, not years.
And is there any information that you can share with their marketing and communications folks?
Yes, at Ignite we did a session of what's new in publishing. We called it publishing at that moment. So if you go to the Ignite, if you go to the tech community and search for the Ignite session on what's new in publishing, it's there, and they go into, I think they actually show some demos and mock-ups of what it's going to be looking like. And it is, yeah. And one of the things we did announce on the roadmap is company news. It's on the roadmap slide as well. And what we saw already was team news, sort of your ground up news. We've announced publicly the company news model, where your company needs to communicate to the organization top down. And that's, again, was announced at Ignite, so it's not terribly far away that you'll hear more details on that. The real details are TBD, but the general scenario of you as a user being able to look at news and see stuff that both comes from your teams and the company, that's what we're trying to hit. Now, where it falls exactly will come. Right, but we're going to give you first-rate experiences both in the web and on devices that achieve that.
By this month, for communications, will I be able to bolt on company news later, or do you think that will be part of it?
I don't know the details enough to answer that question. Yeah. Whatever it is, copying a page is not the hardest thing in the world to do later also. So do we actually with copy and move? We're releasing copy, so you can copy things from one SharePoint library to another. Does that work on page libraries, do you know? Okay, I didn't think so, but maybe someday. All right, other questions? Yeah.
How are you guys handling external collaborators?
Excellent question. So external collaboration. So groups, which really underpin everything, support external users. So you can add an external user to a group, and that user is a first-class member of that group, so they have access to everything that an internal user would, the planner, the conversations, the calendar, the SharePoint site. The one thing they don't have access to right now is the conversation in Teams. But that is an obvious place for us to address that. I would not expect that to take long. Okay, I didn't know we had announced it, so thank you again. It's like, how many? So, not a preview is coming, and not, yeah, it's obviously something that needs to be met. So you can add an external user. We also made it, if you used to do external sharing, we've done a lot to improve it. The whole invitation process is better. When a user, if a user, maybe you're sharing with someone who has a Gmail address, when they go to interact with your site for the first time, the sort of creation of the Microsoft account is basically, you know, a one-click through. It's not anywhere near as crazy as it used to be. So the sharing, the joining, and the access are there for everything except for Teams. That's for groups, which power SharePoint. So it's exactly the same. And the classic external sharing uses the same mechanisms. So the classic external, the external sharing in classic SharePoint is much smoother and easier for everyone involved.
Does it deal with the whole issue of if you have multiple Microsoft accounts? Because I have many problems where somebody's logged into their, I don't know if that's Hotmail or Bing or something, and then I send them an external SharePoint to their business account, they click the link, and it passes through their cat's
Yeah.
account, and then it corrupts their problem.
Yeah, so to summarize that for folks who didn't follow it, if I'm sharing with Dan Holm at live.com, I'm sharing, or no, let's say I'm sharing with Dan Holm at contoso.com, who's an external user. And Dan Holm is currently logged onto his browser as Dan Holm at live.com with his personal account. There used to be some challenges with how that worked. There are certain things that aren't in our control as far as how browsers cache cookies and all that stuff, so we can't control everything. But we've definitely improved it. I know the rough edges you're talking about. The best thing you can do regarding that is there's a setting in which admin center for external links have to be accepted by the person to whom they're addressed.
So,
Is that in the SharePoint?
it's in both now.
Okay.
But for what you need to do today, since we've announced but haven't released the new OneDrive Admin Center, which also has a duplicate place to go to the setting. If you go into the Sharing tab inside the SharePoint Online Admin Center, there's a section which allows you to control the composition and publishing of those external links themselves.
Yeah, so basically I can say, I'm sharing, as an administrator, I say the person who accepts the invitation must be the person to whom it was addressed. And so I share with Dan, Dan's logged on as Dan at live.com, but it stops Dan and says, oh no, this isn't right, log on differently.
Live ID is Dan at contoso.com, but it's not going to stop.
If you're a person, as I am personally, who has a live ID that matches an Office 365, it still might be a little rough, but it's still better. Yeah, that's a whole. And Azure's working on all these issues. You know,
There's lots of little places where that's a weird backdoor.
I just have to do the password all.
Yeah.
And soon you'll have a LinkedIn identity that has the same email stream as, by the way.
Yeah. I can definitely tell you, having done external sharing for a very long time, the state that it is today is better than it was even 4 months ago by a visible and noticeable difference for admins as well as users, and it's still going to get better. Both Azure and Office 365 are, you know, really, really working hard so that authentication just never becomes an issue.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Well, and that was the thing, though, because we had to go to PowerApps, but you know.
Yeah. All right, cool. If anyone else has questions, please feel free to come up and ask. There's an Ask the Experts session, yeah, at this point, Chris may not actually go there, so you might as well stay and ask questions if you want. Thank you guys so much for coming and staying so long. Have a wonderful afternoon.